Hey, good day, everybody. Hey, thanks once again for turning back into my channel. I greatly appreciate it. What I've got today for you is the release of the new 2020 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Let's just say I'm quite shocked to hear who's getting in because I thought rock and roll meant rock and roll. Yet they've inducted Depeche Mode. Now, I listened to some Depeche Mode, didn't mind a couple of their songs, but I definitely wouldn't put them in a category of rock and roll. To me, rock and roll would be something like, I don't know, the Doobie Brothers or Van Halen or Bachman Turner Overdrive, Steppenwolf. Those are who I would consider a rock and roll. And Depeche Mode doesn't seem to fit that category. To me, they're kind of like more like Gary Newman. They're kind of in an alternative category of their own. Then they inducted the Doobie Brothers, which I think is that's pretty decent, good choice there for that one, the Doobie Brothers. Whitney Houston. They inducted Whitney Houston. I know I got driven nuts by my sister playing her CD, or probably a tape, if I remember right. She bought a tape of Whitney Houston's first album and played it over and over and over and over and over, and absolutely drove myself, my brother, basically the household nuts, constantly hearing Whitney Houston. Okay, she's got a good voice, but her songs just drove me nuts. And to this day, I still can't stand hearing any Whitney Houston song. And then we step into the future a little bit, and she did the soundtrack to and did that horrendous movie called The Bodyguard with that stupid song for that movie. And, many, many years later, I bought a house in Medford. I'm working for the city of Ashland as a firefighter, and my next door neighbor plays that stupid Bodyguard song over and over and over and over. And one day, probably for an hour, she played that song nonstop. The most obnoxious, annoying Whitney Houston song, I think, in the history of Whitney Houston. Needless to say, not rock and roll, more like pop. I wouldn't even consider her soft rock. Yeah, rock and roll? I don't think so. Nine Inch Nails? I've only heard a few of their songs, but again, I wouldn't put them into rock and roll. They seem to be kind of in line with Depeche Mode to a degree in a couple of their songs. So, I don't know, maybe because I didn't listen to all of their music, that maybe they had one or two songs that was more rock and roll that fit more into the genre of rock and roll. But I'm not going to judge them too steeply. Another one they did was Notorious B.I.G.? Rock and roll? I listened to a couple of his pieces here because I had no idea who this was. It was rap. No wonder I didn't know who it was. I don't like rap. I think rap's terrible. Rock and roll is not rap. So why is he inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I don't get it. And then T-Rex. Now, I couldn't remember T-Rex off the top of my head. I do recall when I did look it up, the Get It On song. I definitely remember that one from my childhood. Even I think it made some appearances in a few movies. I do remember hearing it though. So I would say of that list, yeah, other than the Doobie Brothers, a little closer to rock and roll. But I was shocked to hear who didn't make the cut. And I just came up with a few of their list. The Dave Matthews Band, he's not there? Really? Pat Benatar? Oh, I definitely listened to a lot of Pat Benatar, and I definitely put her in the category rock and roll. So, Whitney Houston over Pat Benatar? Judas Priest was also on their list. I didn't like Judas Priest, didn't like his music, but definitely in the category of rock and roll. So Depeche Mode over Judas Priest? I think their choices their selections are a bit off, if you ask me. And then they put in who? Oh, Notorious BFG over Tin Lizzy. Come on. I think maybe they need to change this Hall of Fame from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to just Music and Rap Hall of Fame, because that's what this list represents. It doesn't represent rock and roll. I don't know. I don't know who ultimately made the choice. I did look at who was on the top of the fan list, and it was a Dave Matthews Band. So he's not there. So it's quite obvious those who put in a vote for who they wanted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame didn't really have any sway into who actually got in. And I think a lot of this has to do with they put people in who have died. It sounds like more like a memorials Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for people who aren't even rock and roll, but we'll put them in because they died. Uh, uh, they're not my choices. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, there's your Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for 2020. A whole bunch of people who don't do rock and roll or who didn't do rock and roll, since several of them are dead now, they're now inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So there you have it, 2020 list. Maybe they'll do better next year. But off that list, I'd have to say maybe not. Anyway, hey, thanks for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. Leave your comments in the link below, down below. I'd love to hear from you. Might even respond to a few of those who do. Thanks for tuning in. It's greatly appreciated. Please hit like and subscribe if you would. It does mean a lot to me. So thanks for taking your time out of your day. Have a good one and take care.